Sorry, we had a technical delay, Zoom issues, computer issues, login issues, and thankfully we are in recovery, and we know that it's all part of God's perfect plan for us. So welcome. I am Karen A., your host for the Afro-Euro Reco12 podcast. Reco12 is self-supporting through our own contributions. I will try and post some step 7 donation instructions later in the chat box. Anyway, we welcome you. I'm here live in Jerusalem, and today our dear fellow Avital J, who is also here in Israel, will be sharing some experience, strength, and hope with you about how humility set her free. Since we're running a little bit late, I'm going to just have Avital share a little bit about who she is, her recovery bio, and then share with us about how humility set her free. Thanks, Avital.
Okay.
Take it away.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay. Hi. Thank you all for being here and giving me this place to share. My little recovery bio is I'm a recovering drug addict, alcoholic. Those are my main addictions. And then as I got clean, I've been clean for over 10 years now. So as I got clean, other addictions came up, other things that I learned about myself that I need to work on. So I'm also in CODA, who isn't addicted to sugar. So pretty much I've experienced most addictions, but the ones that I'm officially recovering from are drugs and alcohol. I got clean. I started using when I was 12, drugs, and I got clean when I was 17. So I had a few short years of very intense using, and it was very low. It was very hard, and it brought me to my knees, to say the least. And yeah, I'm really grateful that I got to recovery at such a young age, and that I was desperate enough to need it and want it when I did. Yeah, so that's like really in a nutshell. Should I go on about like war stories, or should we jump straight into the humility and the recovery part?
Whatever you think will be helpful, Avital. I think it's helpful to know about, the program you work today and how you work the 12 steps today. Maybe you're going to share about that. But yeah, how you made it into the rooms of AA and NA.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. So my rock bottom was, basically me coming home from the party every night and the extreme between the high of the drugs and being out and just thinking that I was, and I'm going to be talking about this, my topic that I chose is humility. And the opposite of humility is like thinking you're either on the top or the bottom. That was so what I was experiencing in my active addiction. I was, so the first time I picked up a drug, when I was 12 years old, it was the most amazing feeling in the world, because all of a sudden I felt free. I felt good. I felt like on this high wave of life. Everything was clear. I didn't care. I wasn't self-conscious anymore. I wasn't worried about what other people were thinking, just all of this heavy stuff that I felt in my heart, on my shoulders, and my consciousness was just gone. And I loved it. I loved the feeling of freedom. I loved the feeling of freedom. I can't even say it in another word. Carelessness, just being able to go through life without having those thoughts, the thoughts of, who's looking, what should I do? I always, before I started using and while I was using, I always wanted to fit into to whatever circle of people I was with. That's who I wanted to fit in with. So if it's, am I going to be the good girl over here, or am I going to be the, sort of rebellious person over there? Am I going to get good grades over there? Not good. Like whatever the group of people I was around I wanted to fit in. And when I started using, I changed the groups of people, obviously, that I was with, so I felt more free. I felt like I could just use and just the funner side of life, the more careless, less responsible, the better. But even then, when I was with certain people, family, friends, I put on this mask of fitting in, no matter where I was. Yeah. So the different worlds that I was living was very, very hard for me. It was very confusing to me. I was like what a lot of people call functioning addicts. I mean, again, I was a teenager. I was 12 to 17, so it's not like I had a job, but I did go to school for part of the time. But I didn't have responsibilities. I didn't have bills to pay. I just had, my own self to do whatever I wanted to do with. Yeah. So I would go out, I would party, and I would feel amazing. I would feel like, again, the king of the world. I would walk down the street. I owned the street. I owned the bench that I sat on, like everything. I thought I was the coolest person. And I believed it and I felt it, and it was amazing. Felt wonderful. But then I would get home and the party was over and it was quiet, and I was left with myself and all the things I had done and didn't do, and the people I lied to, and the drugs I stole, and the heartache of being left alone by whichever guy was there that night. And then I felt like the scum of the earth. I felt so miserable. I felt so alone and confused and guilt and shame, and just knowing that I had this higher purpose, and I had knowing that this wasn't this isn't all life has to offer. Just always knowing and believing that there's more, and how am I living at the bottom? Yeah, so that was like my bottom. That's what I was coming into recovery with. My bottom, if I had an hour, I would give way more details, but bottom line is my parents. I grew up in a great home. My parents were very loving and supportive and nice and, good parents. But it came to a point where my parents threatened to kick me out. They said, "You cannot continue living under this roof with this drug use. This is not okay. You can either go do your own thing, or you could go to rehab and we'll pay, or you could try these meetings, 12-step meetings. NA was my meeting that I first went to. So I did. I went into NA because I didn't want to go to rehab and have people brainwash me into thinking I was an addict, because that was clearly not the problem. I was not an addict. And so I got into NA. I started hearing people sharing true, honest feelings that I was feeling that I didn't know how to say. I didn't know how to voice. And I was, like I said, I was desperate enough to really need a solution, because I was burning my life up and it just had started. I was a baby and I was already wanting to end it all. Yeah. So I guess that brings me to the topic of humility, because really for me, what I found in recovery is that humility it's kind of like meditating, like when you're meditating and you're in that moment of quiet, and then you think about it, And and then you're like, oh wow, it's working. And then your mind like gets lost, and then it's like over. So it's kind of like that. I find with humility is when I'm truly in humility, it's good. But as soon as I think that, oh, I figured this out, I'm such a humble person, like that is when my arrogance is kicking in, and then it's like I have to rebalance and find the humility. Okay, so what I want to talk about, like not technically, but like what humility is, and then I'll give like some examples from how it set me free and how I use it in my life today, to have the freedom that I've always wanted. The freedom, like when I was 12, and I just wanted to fit in, and I looked for drugs, and I got high, and I felt good. That's what I've always wanted. That's what we all want, is to feel good. And so for me, this is like humility is that thing that has brought me self-acceptance and the freedom to live my life, not carefree, because I do care and I do have responsibilities, but carefree in the sense that I don't need to worry about other people's opinions. I don't need to camouflage myself. I don't need to wear a mask today. I don't need to fit into situations. Obviously, I'm respectful in certain circles and other places. Okay, so the opposite of humility is, I think I started to explain this, but when we're feeling either way up high above everybody else, I'm better than you, I'm working better than you, I make more money than you, I am more spiritually evolved than you, whatever it is, but somehow I dress better, I look better, I'm better. Just this thought of us being better is the opposite of humility. And another opposite on the other side is feeling that we're not like everybody else. Like I'm just sort of looking out into the world with the eyes of everybody's better than me, and sort of being a victim, and things happen to me, and yeah, just everybody else knows better, like going to a job interview knowing that you're not going to get it, and who would even want me, and just all these low thoughts of the scum of the earth, a piece of shit, nobody wants me, nobody sees me, I'm nothing. So that's also the opposite of humility. So as soon as we take ourselves and put ourselves somewhere outside of humanity and all the other people, then that's like not being humble. So for me, and that's staying alone. So when we're not being humble, we're like isolating ourselves. In other words, we're isolating ourselves in this bubble of better than or worse than, but I'm here and everybody else is over there. And what a new friend in recovery who just brought this up to me. I mean, I've been in the program for over 10 years, but it's funny how people can just say things at the right time. She said to me, connection is the antidote for addiction. And I find that to be so true, that as soon as we connect, that's what we need instead of our addiction. And when we're, isolating, feeling guilty, feeling shame, that's when we put ourselves in this bubble, and we need to use, no matter the drug, we need to use, because we cannot take the pain of being in that circle alone, even if it's I'm better than alone. Because if I'm better than everybody else and everybody else is a piece of shit, then it's really lonely up there and nobody's at my level and nobody gets me. And it's the same. It's the same. Even if I'm better, like I'm isolated. So I'll give a little example in my life that has just happened over the past year or so that has really transformed my life. It's small, but it's these small little things that add up and build into our lives. So I'm a mother. I have 3 kids. I have a husband. I have a home. Thank God. I'm doing good. You know, I've put the work in, and I'm okay now. And you know, as people in society, sometimes we have character defects. We all know that. We're doing the steps, we're looking at them, we're looking in the mirror. One of my character defects is impatience, you know, and that can come out really strong with kids. So sometimes I'm impatient with my kids. And most of the time I'm a great mom and I'm very patient and loving and it's all good. But a few years back, I would look at my husband when he would be impatient with the kids. And, you know, if he would say to the kid, like, oh, come on already, like, whatever, it's just something small, or, you know, raise his voice, or just, again, something small, I would like lose it. Like, how could you do that? They're just kids. You know, I would just give it to him. Like, this is not, you know, how you behave, and how could you do that? And the humility here, as soon as I was able to take a step out of him. So in this situation, I was thinking that I was above him. I'm better than him. I'm a better mother. And with these thoughts, I was very unhumble, obviously. And then balancing it out, it took me a while to realize it, but realizing that I can also be impatient with my kids, and that doesn't make me a terrible mother. Like, this is just human. So as soon as I brought the attention back to myself, and almost, you know, when we're judging other people, we're usually judging ourselves. So instead of judging my husband for being impatient, I would bring it back to myself and say, when was the last time I was impatient? You know, when was the last time I was short? When was the last time I raised my voice? And it just gave me the freedom to accept myself, to be like, oh wow, okay, I'm not perfect, and then okay, he's not perfect, and then it just sort of balances it out. So now I'm not looking for that perfection. That I didn't really say anything about this, but perfectionism has been a huge cause of my disease in recovery. It's been something that I've been working on like every day. This image that we need to be perfect, which again is putting ourselves on a pedestal to be some unnatural superhero, perfect, everything needs to be in place, which is not reality. Yeah. So do I have, how much more time do I have?
I think it's great. I think we definitely have time for like another example of where, you know, you used your program to get to a place of humility, or to, like you said, to get out of addiction and into connection. You've got a little bit more time.
Okay. So yeah. So
10 minutes. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, you could take another 5 or even 10 minutes. You have time.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so so another thing that I really wanted to talk about, I mean, it's on the same topic, but just the fact that humility gives us self-acceptance. It gives us proper glasses to look at ourselves within the world. So, I mean, again, how this has affected me is, you know, mostly when I make mistakes, because that's when I start to feel guilty. That's when I start to judge myself. That's when I start to think that I'm less than, you know, but not just, you know, also when I think that another huge part of my disease in in recovery is thinking that I'm so spiritually evolved. I'm so clean and serene and recovered and good, and that is also being arrogant and you know, being a know-it-all. And any time that I have fallen into that place, a huge example in my recovery, just a few years ago, I stopped going to meetings because, there was like a smokers meeting. I don't smoke cigarettes anymore. I quit that drug as well. Thank God. And, I just didn't really connect to that meeting at that time where I lived. So I stopped going. I still had a sponsor. I still did step work. But I let go of a fundamental part of, the triangle of what makes recovery work. And, it's very easy to just let little things go when you feel like you're good. And it really affected me. It brought me to a place. I spoke about coda. I just said it in one word, but it brought me to a place where I thought my marriage was going to end because I was in such a sick place of self-obsession. I was sick. I wasn't using drugs. Okay, that's my drug of choice, drugs and alcohol. Like, that's always going to be my drug of choice. But I was using this excuse to be God in my marriage. And I wasn't going to meetings, and I wasn't sharing, and I wasn't talking about it, and I was isolating myself. And it messed me up. It really did. Thank God today. I mean, my sponsor basically said to me in very, very clear words, you don't have to be here. My husband uses it's just marijuana, but that has been a very challenging part for me in my recovery. Seeing that, he's very respectful. He doesn't do it in the house, but just knowing that that's like in my environment, in my very, very close circle, has been very challenging for me. And at one point I was like, maybe it'll just be easier if I just start using, and I don't like marijuana, just for the record. Like, I love drugs and I love alcohol. Marijuana, I used it. I don't even like it. And my sponsor said to me, I was feeling like a victim. I was feeling self-pity. I was feeling, like, why did this happen to me? God, I got clean. I'd been working my butt off in recovery, and, and you give me this man who's getting high. Like, what's up with that? And so my sponsor at the time, she told me, you don't have to be here. You get to choose to be here if you want. And if you want to go out and use, go for it. She said that just so plain. And it was like a slap in the face to me because, you don't think that your sponsor is going to go tell you to go out and use. And she didn't, but she just laid it out for me. Like, you're not here against your own will. And in that moment, I recommitted to my recovery on a whole different level of like, wow, yeah, I am here because I want to be here. And then I started going to meetings. I started sponsoring other people. I started making more phone calls. I don't miss my meeting. I'm in service in my home group, not because I have all the time and energy, just because I know that if I don't, then I'm going to slip. And it might not be drugs, and it might be, there's so many things to be addicted to. And I really do want to live my freest life. Yeah, so just in this example of my marriage, what helped me grow, and now I would like to say that I'm in a very, very happy marriage right now. We're both very, very happy. And all that's changed is my inner world, is my brain, is my mind, my humility, and realizing that just because I did something or didn't do something doesn't mean that everybody else needs to do that or should do that, or it has nothing to do with me, other people's processes. And there's really a lot of freedom in that. Just for today, I can say that I see myself with way more grace than I ever have. I don't have half as much guilt as I used to. Even when I make a mistake, even when I find myself watching TV for 4 hours, which is crazy for me. That's like the biggest binge. But it used to be that I would go in all hours of the night, messed up, on drugs. And so my lows today are way better than they used to be. But I'm not saying that to sound good. I'm saying that to say that for me, 4 hours of watching TV is insanity for me, just for today in my life. And when I have that insanity briefly, I don't come out of it with guilt and shame and beating myself up and telling myself that I'm so bad and like, how could I do that? And, where is my head? And there's so much to do. And like, I just don't go there because I know that that's the opposite of what's going to get me to freedom. So what I do in that moment is share. I pick up the phone, I do the connection, and I share. I say, yo, I just watched 4 hours of this stupid TV show. I talked to my friend and she says, wow. In Hebrew, we say, oh, vimutach, we love you. And so there's almost nothing I could say that won't get me that response of like, we love you. And I'm really, really grateful to be able to give that kind of love and acceptance to other addicts. Another thing that's super unique in our program is that there really isn't judgment. We can say everything. There's no like interest. Me sitting here talking, it's not because I need or want anything from anybody here. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm not trying, I'm just sharing what I have. And whoever's listening, you can take it, you can leave it. Like also, it's not any of my business what anybody does with this. And that's something that I really, really love about this program. Okay, so I will wrap it up. Again, thank you so much. I think Karen wants to move on to the next part. So thank you for now.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I'm doing this on my phone due to our technical issues, so I'm going to jump back and forth. If I don't make eye contact with you, you look beautiful, and we see that when we straighten out spiritually, the mental and physical recovery follows suit. I don't know if you guys could see Avital, but I see a glowing, shining spiritual life shining through a beautiful, put together physical presentation. So those are the promises, party people. Yeah, I love you. And I had a question for you. Talk about how you get connected. You just watched 4 hours straight of Netflix. You just, I don't know, for me, even in the supermarket, I'm feeling low and I'll spend, $500 on a whim. All stuff I'll need eventually, but probably not immediately. What do you do to get connected? What do you do to course correct? You've done something. It's not your primary addiction. You didn't pick up, I didn't, compulsively overeat. I didn't, act out in sex or love or validation addiction. I didn't, start an Insta friendship, but, I kind of, I started piling bags in the supermarket or bought a bunch of stuff on sale. Even if I have the money, for us spiritually fit people, we know that that's a flashing red light. What do you do?
Yeah.
How do you get course connect and how do you connect? Talk about both parts.
How
do you get to your own program and how do you connect with others?
It's such a beautiful question and it's so relevant because we always need to bring the balance back. We get good, we do good, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, or out of something small, or just a mood, or I didn't get enough sleep last night, or somebody yelled at me, or like whatever, like something small can just like set us on this course of self-destruction, for whatever that means to each person. But yeah, so for me, how I connect, how I course correct, where I want to go and where I want to be. Like I said, I share. That has been the biggest thing for me in my recovery is just picking up the phone straight away and talking about it. And straight away is whenever I'm ready. So, it could be that that's in an hour from now, or it could be in the moment. Or it could be in 20 minutes when I get in the car after the grocery store, your example of going to the grocery store and spending too much money, or, for me getting off the couch and like realizing like, wow, that was crazy. So for me, like I said, I'm a mother of 3 kids, and and my good friends in recovery also have kids. So when I have time to talk, doesn't necessarily mean that my other friends have time to talk. I mean, there's other people I could talk to, but for sure, having a strong connection with somebody that's just set up where you can just talk has been the biggest thing in my life that has transformed everything. And I even send voice recordings. If I can't call and they can't talk or whatever, I don't shut up. I don't say, oh, I tried to call. I'll either call somebody else or I'll just send them a voice message and just share 10 minutes, 12 minutes of recording myself talking about how I'm feeling and the insanity that's going on in my mind. That's my biggest thing that I actually do that helps me. Other things that I can do, sometimes I do, is gratitude. It usually takes me longer to get there because when I'm feeling all that like bottled up, not good pain, pressure and guilt, shame, these thoughts of like, negative thoughts, however, they may be for you. It usually takes me longer to get to gratitude. But after I share, then I can like do gratitude and be like, wow, I'm grateful that it was just 4 hours. I'm grateful that it was just TV. I'm grateful that, I have who to share with. And I'm grateful that I have my kids that I keep. So I hope it didn't like mess up. Anyways, so my number one, keep it simple. This program's all about simple tools that we can actually do in real life, is just pick up the phone and share. And it's not easy to do in that moment, which is why you need to build the consistency of sharing when things are okay. Because when you're feeling like that, you don't want to share and you don't want to pick up the phone, but that's what I need to do in that time, is find the connection and not stay isolated.
Amazing. Anyone else have any questions? Please feel free to post your questions in the chat. Was there a certain moment in your recovery that you felt like now I'm recovered? Like, was there a certain thing you did? Was it when you started sponsoring? Tell me about the sort of turning point.
Yeah, so I've definitely had a lot of moments where I thought that I was recovered and done and good to go. And part of my fantasy in coming into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous was, I'm going to learn how to control myself so that I can use. Once I get recovered, I'm going to go out and use. That was what I came into the rooms thinking. So in moments, again, my drug of choice is drugs and alcohol. So when I came at the beginning, I would go to event and there would be alcohol and I would like have to wait outside, or it would be sitting on the table at somewhere. I don't bring it in my house, but whenever I would like get triggered by seeing some kind of drug, and then when that stopped, whenever I saw myself, noticed myself in a situation where there was drugs and alcohol, somebody may have even offered me a glass of champagne or whatever, like it's something small, but I was able to say no wholeheartedly. I believed, okay, I am recovered. I'm no longer obsessing about this drug. I'm no longer chasing it. I'm no longer dreaming about it. I'm good. So that was like a first time that I thought I was recovered. Another time you mentioned when I started sponsoring.
By the way, I'm just going to jump in here for all you people
Yeah.
on the Zoom, or all you people listening to the recording. I still relate to this, in love addiction. We work our steps. We get real quickly to working with others, which Avital does a lot of. We work on service and prayer, of course. And all of a sudden, someone tells you they want to set you up on a date, and you're like, it just, the promise of neutrality. Like, how crazy is that for someone who was once boy crazy or, always, kind of scanning the room for the next contender, or, Prince Charming, to be like, yeah, my kids need me. Yeah, no, I need to focus on my spiritual life. Like, that's crazy. How many people do like 180-degree turns in their life? So just for all you who don't, identify necessarily with drug addiction or alcoholism, that's crazy. We talk about it in OA also, like that I go to a wedding or a bar mitzvah or some spread. And, my addictive thoughts can pop up in different ways. Like I think about like, oh, if there are leftovers of this catering, I'm going to take it home for my kids. Like I know that's my compulsive overeater, but when they're serving chocolate cake, I don't think of eating it. It is a little flashing yellow light that I want to take the leftovers home for my kids because several of them are chubby. But we get a neutrality, and this goes across fellowships. And you were going to talk a little bit about working with others. Then we'll just take that, answer that question. We have a few questions from our audience in the chat.
Yeah. So working with others has also made me believe that I am recovered and I know what I'm talking about. And when I started working with my second sponsee, I really thought that I got very cocky. And, if she was 1 minute late, I was like, we said 5 o'clock, like I was like in her face. And then I was late. And then I forgot that we even had, and it just happened to me so many times that I realized like, wow, like, oh my God, I'm a human. She's a human. I'm not perfect. She's not perfect. And just going back to this, sifting it down to humility again. And I'm not recovered. And, it's so every time, I mean, yes, to answer your question, I've definitely felt many times that I'm recovered and I am good. And then my higher power always reminds me that there's still work to be done. And I'm very grateful for that, because if I was recovered and done, I think it would be pretty boring. Yeah. Okay. So
Yes,
I will.
Amazing. So let's take a question here. Amazing. We have a question here. What helps you detect when a certain character defect shows up in your day to take action on? And what are your warning signals?
Okay, that's also a really, really good question. My warning signals, I would say that I usually don't realize they're there until I'm acting out on them. Unfortunately. I mean, I guess it depends what you're warning, what character defects you're talking about. But for me, what that means, character defects, is when we act in ways that we don't believe God wants us to act. So, cheating, stealing, lying, impatience, hate, humiliating somebody, using, just not being nice, honking, whatever. Just like for me, that's like what character defects means. And I usually don't know that it's there until I'm like in it. So I don't really, that I've noticed, I don't really have warning signs, but what I have started doing very recently is as soon as I get that character defect start to slip out, I try my best to pause. And the biggest one for me right now is impatience. When I start to see that I'm like losing it, I'm impatient, I want to like move things along, I want to make things happen my way. I want to, I want me. I pause and I actually take a deep breath. And if I can share in that moment, I do. Sometimes, most of the time, I can't, because it's like right now I got to do something, and I'm so impatient because like it's got to happen and like time sensitive, and it's really hard to do it in that time to share. But even just putting a mental note that I'm going to share about this, no matter how it turns out, like, and then just knowing that gives me the courage to course correct and be like, if I'm going to have to share about this later, I want to share that I got impatient and then I, took a big drink of water. So I don't know if that fully answered the question, but I think it's more for me, again, I think it's more about catching it as it starts to come out and being really, really aware. First of all, you have to be really aware of what your character defects are, in order to recognize them in real time, and know what they are and give them a name and see them. Oh, I am being impatient. Oh, right now, this is not honest of me to want to take that or to want to say that. We got to know what they are. So that's step number one. Step number two would, as soon as you feel it slipping out, or if you do feel it bubbling up, just stop, pause, just not stop, pause, just take a beat. If you can share in that moment, do. If you can't, you can do a little dance. But for me, physical is a big thing. Like I breathe. Sometimes I like move my body posture. Again, I'm talking about like impatience. That's the biggest one. Yeah. So I hope that answered the question. I hope it was helpful.
Yeah. I'm going to throw something in here. Avital is young. This might be a little bit of advice, unsolicited advice for you and for all the younger people on the line. The big book talks about this. You want to bring your bottom up. I'm probably at least twice Avital's age. We have a lot of mommies and grandmommies in these fellowships in these rooms. A lot of women come in after they've raised their kids and after they've made the mistakes. But if your kids are little like hers, or if you haven't had any yet, like you want to wedge this in, because you want to have a lot less people on your harms list down the line. You want to be doing a lot of less step 10s down the line. Like, she is lucky. You young people on this line are lucky to start now before you have a whole, littered graveyard, behind you of mistakes and affronts and harms and all of that. So like that, we want to take care of these things. We want to pause. Like the big book says, may you find him now. And sometimes I do that. I'll just say, God, now. My teenager's mouthing off at me now. And I'll get all sorts of weird intuitive things, like yesterday, I literally jumped in her lap, and I just said to her, you forget that I have a green belt in Taekwondo. And she laughed at me. She's like, Mom, you're bragging about your green belt. And I was like, well, you have a black belt in being a teenager. So, like God sends different messages, and sometimes it's humor and sometimes it's uncanny. We just have to, have a little bit of that, set aside mentality. Along those lines, we pray for the next right thought or action. We have a question here, Avital, from another one of our members. Where does prayer come in for you, Avital?
Yes, thank you so much for asking that, because Karen just said like God now, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't say one thing about God. So thank you so much for that question. Where does prayer come in? Prayer is huge. I don't know how I didn't say this, but I also stop and I say God. I usually after the like pause, also there's God. And after I connect, if I can't connect with a friend, I'm a very, very, very verbal processing person. Like I need to talk a lot. And when I can't talk, I go to God. So that's usually my second option, which is kind of embarrassing to say, but I do speak to God all throughout the day. Usually in moments where I feel like I'm losing it. I will say something as simple as, God, take this away from me, or, God, take my will, take my life, show me how to live. That's a huge, huge, huge one for me when I'm feeling like I just don't even know what the next step is. Like I'm in, we talked about, character defects, or just like watching 4 hours of TV and like taking one tiny step away from that. It's like, God, like, just to help me. Like, what's the next step? Do I have to put on my shoes now? Like, do I have to like put on music? Like, what is one thing that I can do? So my prayer is very, very simple. Sometimes when I am feeling very, spiritual or whatever, I'll not necessarily actually, but sometimes when I'm in the right moment, I will write out to my higher power. It can be a gratitude, guidance, requesting kind of letter, or it could be a pain-filled letter with cursing and crying and just letting it all out like that. but yeah, definitely talking to my higher power has been a very, very strong part of my recovery. Staying connected, the more connected I am to my higher power, the better, and there a lot of trust comes in. It comes to the bottom line of, do I trust that my higher power is going to really take care of me? And most days, the answer is a full-on yes for me. Like I really do believe that my higher power is taking care of me and working for me in my life, with me, not for me, working with me in my life, and for me, that he's doing it for me. Yeah,
Amazing.
so prayer is huge.
Amazing.
It really is. Like I could do a whole nother one just on prayer.
We might take you up on that. Let me squeeze in one last question here.
Yeah.
And I apologize to everyone, we ran late. I want to just run over by a few minutes and then we'll close out with a prayer. But this is a great question we have. What do you do when you get those self-deprecating thoughts, when you get those negative thoughts? You spoke about I'm the bomb, I'm the best dressed, I'm the most impressive, I'm the smartest. How do you stop the negative and self-deprecating voices?
So I actually learned this on another podcast. And it was about procrastination. And she said that the reason people procrastinate is because there's like a lot of stress in their life or whatever. There's like something big, and for some reason, they feel like they can't move forward with this task. And then they like go around it, and then they feel really guilty and they feel shame and they feel like, oh my God, how did I not do? And then they like, because that guilt adds to the stress and the heaviness, it like somehow it's even harder and heavier to go about whatever it is they need to do. And so that really opened my eyes to how strong guilt and shame and feeling low and feeling like a victim and just feeling these negative things come in, how they can affect us and actually paralyze us. I don't know about you all, but I have been paralyzed from pain and not been able to move, not been able to do what I need to do, not be able to brush my teeth, not be able to take a shower, not be able to do the dishes, not be able to feed myself, I've just from the pain of existing and not doing and not living, and just I exist and I'm miserable. So because I felt that extreme guilt and pain and just whatever, I feel like I'm using the same two words, but it's a whole rainbow of negative thoughts that can come in so many different ways and so many different stories. But I have learned that it's so not helpful to beat ourselves up. And I was the queen of beating myself up. I would have something bad happen, or I did it, or somebody else did, or something else that wasn't good. I would call my sponsor on the phone to my sponsor, and I would beat myself up. I can't believe I did this. I can't believe it happened. And she was like, yo, stop beating yourself up. And it was just so easy for her to say and so hard for me to understand what that even meant. But what it meant was adding on to, like, if we're already having those feelings, adding on to them just makes it heavier and worse. So, and when I started to not take that extra guilt and shame, it felt very foreign. It felt like almost like I was being careless, or like I wasn't taking responsibility. One time I had a baby bird's nest right outside of my window in my bedroom, and I was so excited. And I was like, I saw the little eggs, and I would go peek at them, and I was really excited to watch them grow and to watch the chicks grow. They were still eggs, but then I like went out and I looked out my window, and the mom got startled, or the dad, and they flew away, and one of the eggs fell out of the tree and broke and cracked. And I felt so guilty. I felt like I just killed some little thing that wasn't even born yet. And I took it with me for days. And today, if that would happen, I wouldn't feel guilty. I would feel upset, but I wouldn't feel like I did something terrible, because it was an honest mistake. I didn't do it on purpose. I just startled the bird, and the bird, it was like cause and effect kind of thing. And the freedom that that has given me to not take on extra guilt, it's foreign. It feels weird because we think that we need to beat ourselves up in order to like take responsibility or show that we care, but we don't. If we make a mistake, we need to fix it. We don't need to say that we're a terrible person.
Well, see, this is what happens. Yeah, this is what happens, Avital. This is what happens, people out there on the line. When we get out of fantasy and into reality, I'm not responsible for everything. I didn't do everything. I'm not the worst, not the best either, but I'm good. You know, I'm the daughter of the king. And if we're living with God's will, you know, God wanted the bird's egg to crack. If God is the all powerful director and I am no longer running the show, then I don't have to beat myself up because everything is just perfect and just as he would have it be. Even the stuff that in our, you know, not so humble opinions, you know, humility is our topic, we think is wrong. You know, it's like that is what God wants, you know, and I know all of you have something in your own horror story, in your own, you know, war stories as an addict that you felt was terrible and horrible. Your divorce, your breakup, your death, this, your Al-Anonism. And then today you're like, well, you know, I wouldn't have asked for that trial or test, but I'm not so sure I would give it back because, you know, of who I've become and who my higher power has made me into today. So I'm going to leave us with that thought. And everything is perfect in this world. Thank you so much, Avital J, for sharing with us how humility set us free. And like she just said, you know, free from arrogance, free from needing to run the show, because there is an all-powerful higher power that's doing that just fine and has been for several thousands of years before we even came on the scene. And with that, and with a lot of gratitude to you for sharing your experience, strength, and hope, I will ask you to pray us out, Avital J.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Okay, so I did send in some prayer, but I don't remember what it is, so I'm just going to go from my heart. God, please give us all the courage to let go of any feelings that we don't need to be carrying around. Please show us your will for us. Show us what you want us to be doing in this world. And please put the people in our lives to help us get there. Keep us connected so that we can stay connected to you.
Amen. Thank you. And thank you for joining us on Reco12. If you want to look for any of our resources, donate to the 7th Tradition, record a speaker share. I'm going to put my number in the chat here. Let me do that. If you're interested in doing a Reco12 share or want to recommend a fellow that you think is just a knock your socks off podcaster, and you could look up Reco12 on Gmail and it'll take you there. Thank you, Avital J. Thank you, everyone. And I pray that everybody share their recovery and their light and their beautifulness with the world today. Thank you much.
There was a man put his hand by the side of his mouth, and he wanted to scream, but the sound never came out. So he reached for the bottle to wash the pain away, 'cause what he wanted so badly was to live a different way. And all of his problems and all of his pain filled up the puddle and rose with the rain. His ship kept on sinking to the bottom of the lake, and he knew for certain that he was just a fake, just a fake. was a man put his hand by the side of his mouth. And he wanted to share, but only lies ever came out. So he reached for the needle to numb the pain inside. And the truth that he yearned for shriveled up and died. And all of his problems, and all of his pain, filled up the puddle. Bottom of the lake, he knew for certain that he was just a fake, just a side of his mouth as he read from the book, only truth spilled out. So he reached for a power to help him through the night. 'Cause what lives in the dark